Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Donio, and I'm the president of the Music Business Association. And I want to welcome you all to our webinar this afternoon that's going to be presented by Synchtank. Before we get into the presentation, just a few notes for everyone. We have a number of exciting events coming up in 2018. First is our Nylon Connect Global Music Business Summit, which is January 23rd and 24th in New York, coinciding with Grammy Week. The Grammys are going to be back in New York for the first time in 15 years. You can find information about the program and the schedule on our website. We do this program in partnership with Music Ally from the UK. So it is very much an opportunity for the global music industry, both sides of the pond, to come together and talk about what's coming up in the music business in 2018. Of course, Music Biz 2018 in Nashville will take place from Monday, May 14th through Thursday, May 17th. We're in the process now of finalizing the program, but we've already announced some very exciting keynote speakers: Leor Cohen from Google YouTube, Scooter Braun, who's also going to get our Humanitarian Award and keynote at the awards luncheon. And just yesterday, we announced that Wendy Goldstein from Republic will be the keynote at the Music's Leading Ladies Speak Out program on Tuesday afternoon, May 15th. So watch your emails for further announcements that we'll be making in the new year. And before we make a transition, just want to extend our best wishes on behalf of the Music Business Association to all of you for a very happy holiday season and a healthy, joyous, and prosperous new year. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. They are representing Synchtank and Disney Music. The topic is how to earn more from your catalog, and it's my pleasure to welcome Mike Fallis, Synchtank Account Manager, and April Flores, Manager of Film and TV Synchronisation at Disney Music. Take it away, guys.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, everybody at Music Business for presenting and hosting this today. I am Mike Fallis from Synchtank, as Jim mentioned. I'm here with April Flores, and we're going to talk a bit about how to manage your catalog to earn more from it, some of the best practices that I've learned in my career, and some that April has as well. So to start off, April, would you mind introducing yourself a bit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am April Flores, Manager of Film and TV Synchronization at the Walt Disney Company. I have been at Disney for, I will have my 3rd anniversary in January, so it's right around the corner. Previous to my time at Disney, I worked my way up to account manager at APM Music, which is one of the largest production music libraries out there. And yeah, I was able to make the transition to the record label side of things at Disney. So in particular to my role at Disney, I work a lot with our frontline artists, specifically seeking out marketing synchronization opportunities. So most of my work deals with the Sabrina Carpenters, the Sophia Carsons, the Boy Epics, artists of that nature, and how to maximize their sync placements and help drive other marketing efforts across the company. So that's kind of just a little nuts and bolts of what I do.
So yeah, thanks, April, for that. And as a little bit of a entry into some of April's work, I was hoping to show a video of some syncs that her and her team have recently done, and some, kind of get you in the vibe for the nitty-gritty that we're about to get into. So without further ado, here is a video.
Pirates had infected the seas for generations, so I vowed to eliminate them all. But Jack Sparrow cursed me. I will have my revenge.
The dead have taken command of the sea.
A I will be waiting for you, Jack.
Why would you be waiting for me? Why would you be waiting for me?
Lorraine Broughton, an expert in escape and evasion. Proficient in intelligence collection.
Let's cut the crap, shall we?
And hand-to-hand combat. It's an impressive set of skills.
Talents can be overrated.
Lorraine, how well do you know James Gascoigne?
Cindy, you don't even have a dress.
Oh, no, dress.
Come on, girls. She's not coming with us.
You're not going anywhere in those rags.
Put them together, and what have you got? Cindy?
Being a teenager is hard.
Don't even think about it.
Do you have a thing with Coach Strickland?
Who the hell said that?
Just tell me.
I'm going back home to the place where I belong. There's nothing like.
I'm on track for a college scholarship.
Is she okay? That's my mom.
Hello? Someone up there? He was sleeping in the lighting booth at school. I like it here. I can manage so many teams.
Great. Well, that was a lot of work from a lot of different verticals, including advertising, film, and kind of a to and fro through the licensee and licensor role for Disney there. So I'd love to talk about that in a little more detail. But before we do, I think it's really important that we kind of break into some of the basics and best practices of metadata and other elements and monetization channels that really help you bring your catalog to life financially. And exploit those copyrights as best possible. So we'll be kind of going through each of these sections one by one. There's 6 of them. And within each one, I know you guys all see that you have a question box in which you can kind of ask questions that we'll answer. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like, and we will answer them. I'll kind of be looking at them as the discussion continues, and we'll answer them when they're contextually appropriate. If your question didn't get answered, don't worry, because we will certainly get to it. And if you see we didn't, please feel free to ask it again. If there are any questions that are a little out of scope for the conversation, you can still answer them. We'll be kind of looking at these afterwards as well and answering anything we can offline. So let's dig into it. So the first rule, kind of starting from the bottom up when it comes to best practices for managing your metadata or managing your catalog and exploiting your catalog for sync and licensing, is the metadata. It is the lifebone, the blood that is your catalog. Without your metadata, you can't search your catalog. People don't know how to search it themselves, and it just becomes a mess. Metadata actually happens, in various different ways on an audio track. And the copyright that it's attached to. The metadata that we mostly worry about when it comes to pitching and monetization, not so much the actual active licensing, but getting that music out and into the ears of the would-be licensor, is definitely the audio metadata. So we have a bunch of links that we're going to actually send out. We've done a lot of research on this, dealing with different catalog owners, different clients of ours, the Music Supervision Guild of America, and other communities and industry associations that help us kind of build some best practices for this. So we've linked all of these. We're going to send this handout for you guys after this, so you'll be able to check these links and kind of learn all about it. But the high level stuff is pretty important here. Those links that I just mentioned contain kind of some industry standards and best practices. You don't want your music to stand out in the way that it has strange metadata. because if you do, then it will be harder for people to find your song in their iTunes or in their Synchtank demand side or whichever software they're using. So again, check those links, and that will provide you some data on how to get started with that. If you have any questions about that, you can always feel free to email me, mike@synchtank.com. I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff and love talking about it. Knowing your rights is hugely important. Understanding what you control, how that affects the ability to license any of the catalog you might be pitching is hugely important. Having a good relationship with anybody that might share ownership, different writers, different publishers, maybe someone that participates like in the master, like a record label, so on and so forth. More on that in the links. There's a lot of money left on the table with improper PRO registration. The performance rights organizations, which actually track who pays you for what plays and performances. Making sure that you have your tracks yourself, as a writer, as a publisher, all of your copyrights also appropriately registered with whichever PRO you choose in appropriate territories is hugely important. Like we said, millions of dollars go unclaimed because of this. We do, again, have a link for that, so we'll get into it. Technology, that's our favorite thing at Synchtank. It's kind of what we did. We used to be music publishers before we realized that we were kind of better at building software, and it allowed us a great opportunity to work in the business, deal with great clients and companies such as Disney, but still get to kind of be nerds, which is kind of our thing. So check out those links when we give you this handout, and we can do more on that. If you have any questions, please email me. So the next section is related to kind of client relation management and managing your sales and pitches appropriately. That means, everything from your basic sales techniques to, bringing that more further into the actual sync industry. So just some notes here, which are really easy to kind of glean information from. Teamwork is the dream work. I think Emma, our brilliant producer, wrote that one. I'll give her credit for that. We found that a lot of the most successful companies that we deal with, including Disney, that we're lucky enough to have relationships with, really understand that there are a lot of sets of ears that are all very valuable within an office. So on the creative side, sharing your sync ideas and working as a team to kind of attack opportunities and close deals together based on what creatively you're pitching, as well as personal relationships, so on and so forth, is hugely important. To that end, working with A&R is a great resource because those people have their fingers on the pulse. I think that they tend to pay a lot more attention to the consumer and trending songs and trending genres, things like that. And all the social metrics that are available, because that's more their job. We often work in more of a business-to-business world, whereas they are direct-to-consumer and really have all that juicy bits that are hugely beneficial to you when you think about which work you're going to be pitching for a particular job. They might not have they might have information on the car company that you might be pitching, or they might have some data from a white paper that they have in their industry that we don't have access to that might be helpful. It's always good to ask. You never know. Again, collaborating and pitching is huge. Making sure that if you get stuck, to ask questions and see if anybody has new ideas. We run we're in software, but it's also sales. We run a pretty tight shop in which we communicate weekly, if not daily, even though we're all in disparate locations. London, LA, here in New York. So finding a way, we found that finding a way to schedule regular follow-ups that are very constructive in nature and really help to foster a community of agile professionals is hugely important. There's tons of research and blog posts about working together as a team in agile sales that are really useful. HubSpot has a really great blog as well, so you can check that out.
Yeah, I was going to jump in for a second, Mike, about teamwork and just kind of share a little bit of my experience at Disney. We actually we are very segmented, which I think works really well for us. So what you were talking about is that one person might be dedicated to frontline, creative. We actually do that as well. So we're kind of divided. We have somebody pitching for commercial uses. I pitch for film, TV, and trailer uses. And then we have two, quote clearance people who also handle some of the film, TV, and then what we call internally at Disney Media Networks. So any of our internal relationships with other departments. And I will say having a system like Synchtank is very helpful because, and we can see on the back end, there are lots of sections where you can collaborate per playlist and everyone can contribute their own ideas and their own songs to a list before it goes out. And then you can have the one centralized person who maybe has the best relationship be able to send that to their contacts quickly and easily. So teamwork, I mean, it cannot be stressed enough that this is such a collaborative industry that we are in, and that it really is of the utmost importance. You might hear something of a song and someone else might have a completely different interpretation, and it's not necessarily right or wrong, it's just the best creative idea you can get out there. So I just wanted to really agree with what you wrote, basically.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting as well, because I noticed that you mentioned a little bit about the structure of your team. So you basically you'll have a point person for a particular industry or a particular set of clients, but then you'll all kind of work together behind the scenes. Luckily within Synchtank, thanks for that. We love the plug. To kind of build playlists that one person will pitch out. Is that kind of how your team is structured?
Yeah, that is pretty much how we operate. We like to share pitches when applicable, when we kind of need an extra set of ears on there. And we also do work closely with our A&R team. I thought that was really important because while A&R is very focused on, finding the most talented new artists or finding great writers who can contribute to the catalog, they are trying to create songs that are not necessarily sync focused, especially here, you're trying to create songs that could work for Spotify or for YouTube or for the Vivo audience, depending on, artist and project. So it is really of the utmost importance to have that working relationship with them where you can kind of say, okay, that's great, I love this song, but can you throw a build in there for sync? Or, can you have a little bit of a third act, as something that a rise in the end so it makes it a little more trailer friendly? Or can you work a little bit on the vocal call out in the chorus so it works a little more for promos, that kind of thing. So it helps tremendously to have that level of teamwork.
Yeah, that's and you guys actually, it's because you have one A&R department within Hollywood, or are there a few others as well?
Well, Disney being such a large company, we have an A&R department that works on like the frontline artists, which you would think of for a typical record label. And then we definitely have a hand in working on projects, A&Ring projects that come from, for instance, like Disney Channel. So if we're releasing like a Liv and Maddie soundtrack that's a property on Disney Channel, our A&R department also helps with that. And then of course we have other music supervisors within the Walt Disney Company that we have to work with as well. So a good example of that is when we sign an artist like Jordan Fisher, who's on the record label side, and we have to kind of work closely with the music supervisors for Disney Animation to work out Jordan Fisher doing one of the end credit songs for Moana, or for instance, ZZ Ward, who is one of our artists on the record label, and how she recorded the song for Cars 3 and also wrote part of that song for Disney Animation. So it really kind of runs the gamut. We're a very unique operation, I think, in that regard. But then it's interesting how even after all that work is done, something like Ride, which was the end credit song for Cars 3, ends up becoming something that goes back to our licensing department to monetize and pitch and try to find opportunities. So it really kind of comes full circle.
That's what I always thought was so interesting about your operation, how there's kind of a licensor relationship going on between, sometimes you're licensing outside music, sometimes you're using music that's, already within the Disney umbrella. And then other times, like you do, you're out there pitching the top line stuff and pitching, various other elements of the catalog. Now that actually brings me to a personal question. Now you guys have all of these, great movie scores that you guys have participation in the publishing. Do you find yourself pitching those out for sync with other movie houses or other business entities?
It's something we're very open to and willing to explore. Like I said, with our kind of divided attention. You know, you can only give so much attention to certain things. So I would definitely say when it comes to score, you know, it's difficult because you have to tag it so meticulously to be able to monetize it and have it generate revenue for you. And I will say most of our scores come with a lot of union obligations, so that can sometimes make it very expensive. But we certainly monetize things like the Tron score has been, you know, used and monetized and synced in a variety of productions. And there's lots of old classic, like amazing scores that we do have that we do occasionally license, but it's not so much of an active pitch on that end.
Right. Well, that's great. So, I mean, I think that points to an overall best practice, which is, you know, don't, you know, utilize all your assets. You know, we find we handle, that's one of the things that Synchtank actually was built to do, is to be able to make it possible for creatives to search over expanses of catalogs and find, you know, those kind of dusty edges and dusty corners with copyright that might not have been seen the light of day in several years or even decades. So, you know, aside from that little plug, I would say that is the best practice to make sure you remember everything that you have. And even if it's not the top line stuff that you're most excited about, you know, get it out there and don't forget about it.
It's still important to get it to a place where it can sort of monetize itself and work for you. So if it's something that you own, it's always worth getting up on your site or your pitching tool and at least tagged at a very basic level. So if someone else is searching your site, they can still find it if it works for them. So I guess I just feel like you never want to leave anything that any asset that you own should be in some sort of system, potentially being able to do work on its own for you. Because once you get it set up, you can just leave it and let it do what it's going to do.
Absolutely. I love the set it and forget it mentality. We'll get into that when we talk about licensing. Another best practice that I thought was good to mention that you referenced was you know, being pliable with your copyrights and or with your masters rather, and being able to, you know, understand that, you know, when you're pitching, if you are a small shop and you do have the ability to get into a DAW and, you know, play around and remix or make a slight edit, that can always help when you're pitching. If you can, you know, get the what you're pitching as close to what you think the client might be looking for as possible. And if, again, you can get into doing some editing, that's always a good idea. Of course, you know, me being always conscious of overhead, you don't want to spend hours doing it if you don't think that it's going to be really useful. So yeah, that's something that I think people might utilize for smaller shops as well. If you are, you know, if you do own the master, you do own the copyright, and you do have the ability to manipulate for that purpose. Cool. So of course, you know, utilize technology, another Synchtank plug. We do, you know, there are other softwares that that, you know, allow things such as a CRM, you know, HubSpot, Salesforce, companies like that. We have one that's actually kind of tailor fit for pitching, which I can show you guys on the Disney site. We'll probably get into in a little bit as well. But you know, I wanted to talk about kind of frame that within the pitching conversation and talk a little bit about best practices for pitching. So advancing the slide, that's exactly what's there. And you know, so we find that last mile is super important when you're pitching, and you know, for all sales as well. You know, not just pitching for sync or for licensing. You know, I do a lot of interviews with music supervisors who are kind of on the demand side of this commercial exchange, and they, you know, we hear the same thing over and over again. So we can, you know, kind of the main 2 points are pretty much everything. Be personal and relevant. If you're sending generic emails, you know, I delete them personally. I know a lot of people also do. Doing research on who you're emailing, understanding, you know, kind of what they've been attracted to in their work in the past can give you an idea of what within your catalog might be the most attractive to them. So that personal touch really helps. You know, knowing them is especially great. We'll get into some networking and best practices about that later. But anytime you can get out within, you know, any of these organizations, meet and greets or any conferences, anything like that, meeting as many people as possible, putting a face to the name always helps. we hear a lot from music supervisors that sending, 100 tracks to someone, unless you have a good relationship with them and they know that that there's someone that will go through and listen to each of these tracks and really enjoys that. Some people do. We think it's better to keep the content you're sending snackable, and to make sure that you give them the 3 best options, 4 best options, whatever, instead of sending them a bunch of files that they'll probably never have time to go through. Speaking of sending files, attaching files is never a good idea. Most people won't even see the file or the email for that matter, because it'll hit their corporate spam filter, or Gmail will also filter that stuff out as well if you're not a known sender. So that's something to watch out for. Something else about that is using a transactional mail server such as Mandrill or MailChimp, or linking with a service that actually lets you know when people are opening emails, can help you to make sure that you're actually getting these emails through. We advise against directly saying, hey man, I saw you open my email. That might seem a little off-putting, but having that little bit of business intelligence, which is something that Synchtank does as well, we find really helps for the pitching creative, because it kind of lets you know what's sticking and what isn't. Synchtank will actually tell you what songs they actually were listening to. So if you send them 10 songs, they listen to 2, you know that you want to start that next conversation with the 2 songs rather than a random third. So back to the metadata, labeling everything, is hugely important. And actually, just to go back to the MP3s and other files, if you don't have it budgeted for a Synchtank or a Sound Gizmo, which is our kind of prosumer version of Synchtank, as long as you own everything, using SoundCloud can help, or any of those other streaming services can help, because it gives people a quick listen. Otherwise, throw it in Dropbox, and at least they'll know that it's a verified link and nothing spammy. So again, metadata, super important. We really recommend after this, when you get the handout, digging into some of the links that we sent. And then,
sorry, just to interject, I would say, even if you were to send something like a SoundCloud link, you always want the link to be streaming first, but able to be downloaded. So at least a service, I know, like SoundCloud, you can make it downloadable. I would always do that if you were ever pitching to a music supervisor, because if they like it, they want to just be able to grab it immediately. They may not have time to go back and send you a follow-up email and request the audio. So you definitely want to make it as easy as possible for them to just grab and try out and test out your song.
I cannot agree more. That's absolutely right. Because oftentimes what we learned about too is people, and that goes back to having good metadata as well, and ID3 metadata, which is the one that lives in your actual MP3 that you can hit Command or Control I in iTunes, and it'll pop up that information. It's hugely important, because oftentimes what people will do is they'll just download the whole lot, throw it into their iTunes, and listen to it when they can. And if they can't download it, they'll probably not be able to do that. If they do download it and a month, 6 months down the road, they find that and they say it'd be perfect for this other project, and you don't have your metadata up to snuff, and you don't have your email in the comments field of the track, they won't probably remember or have the time to go backtrack to figure out where that track came from. All in the metadata best practices, super important stuff. Thanks for bringing that up, April. I appreciate it. So utilizing technology, we can get into that a bit later. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But April, if you're cool, I think we might want to move over into our next section.
I'm good.
Cool. And so the next section is, for some reason, not visible. Oh, check that out. So yeah, make your catalog visible to buyers. So that's basically making sure that there's a visual online representation for your catalog, that you're using that to highlight anything, any accolades or blog posts, or link to anything that might be relevant in the market for your artist. So how can buyers find you? Online presence is essential for every business, especially media businesses. So making sure that you have a website that's up to snuff, that it's easily viewable on mobile, that you have easy conversion points, which are buy now or contact us, things like that, buttons and ways that users can interact with you directly. We'll get into more and more. We'll get into more about the ways that you can utilize online licensing and other types of digital licensing to monetize your catalog. It's a bit big for this section, so I think it's like 2 sections down. But promotion is huge as well. If your artists are doing well, make sure that you're talking about it. Sometimes depending on your involvement with the artists themselves, I don't know if you're the label, then that kind of makes more sense. If you're a publisher and you do have a couple of top line artists, it might make sense to go to the label and say, hey, can we join forces on this and get some PR for this artist, because we feel that it'd be really good for Sync, even though they might even find that it might be out of cycle for a record or something like that. But so it could always be worth having those conversations to see if there's any teamwork that can be done. But making sure that your catalog is visible on all social media, making sure that Instagram usually isn't necessarily the thing for businesses, especially businesses that peddle in audio, of course, but Twitter's great. We have a great Twitter following that we built just through interacting with people, being a part of the community. That community engagement also can work as promotion and marketing, because you're showing that you have something to say about the business. You're showing your expertise if you have any. If you don't, asking questions is great. Also makes you visible. So LinkedIn is also great for that as well. Music Biz and a lot of other associations have some great LinkedIn offerings that are great for getting connected with people. I find that is really helpful for us. Doing some email marketing can be good as long as you're doing it tastefully. If you have new records to put out, you might have a list of either followers, business contacts, music supervisors, whomever they may be. It might be good to send out a quarterly email saying, hey, this is the new stuff. And of course, that's a bit of sales, because you're going to have a link within that email to either email you back or link it to a web property in which someone can listen to the actual catalog. Get strategic. Read blogs is my top recommendation for getting strategic. There is so much writing all over the internet about SEO optimization, content marketing, the wide world of social media marketing. Lynda has some lynda.com, plug for these guys. They have some incredible tutorials that you can take. The cool thing about this is that the cream usually floats to the top. So if you're just doing Google search, the first page or two will usually be the most valuable posts or tutorials or whatever about any of these topics. So topics, again, you can search content marketing, SEO optimization, social media marketing. Check those out and read away. And then streaming platforms, they kind of work in the same way. YouTube, if as long as you have the rights for everything, can be great to get stuff out there. Creating, maybe even creating little syncs can, with video that you can use as well, just to put the songs out there can be helpful. And of course, we have actually a feature within Synchtank that allows you to push a Synchtank playlist directly to streaming properties such as Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud. All of those are great for playlist hosting. Actually, another great SEO or marketing strategy that you can look up is playlist marketing, which is a huge, I'm sure everybody is in music biz, so I'm sure you guys have all heard the buzz about that. But playlist marketing works for publishing companies as well. April, do you have anything that you can, any insider tips that you can share about how Disney works any of their frontline stuff for social or for streaming?
Some. I actually work fairly closely with our Spotify representative, and it's very much a work in progress for everybody. I think everyone's still trying to figure out the best way to strategize and market and monetize, especially when it comes to frontline on those services. It's not. It's kind of a. I'm trying to figure out how to say. It's a double-edged sword for us, because on the sync side, we're not really trying to market and promote, come to check out our Disney licensing site, right? Like ours is a lot more artist focused or project focused. So a project let's say like Descendants is going to have a bigger impact and more of a streaming presence on something like a YouTube or a Vivo, because those come with dancing components. So you think about those videos, you get a lot more revenue and streams and generation being on those visual sites, because that's what young kids want to watch. You know, they want to watch the video, they want to learn the choreography, you know, so that's always something that we talk about here. When it comes to new artists, it's kind of the same. That's why I work a lot with Spotify, because our brains kind of work the same. You know, you're trying to get these songs by these up and coming artists into playlists at Spotify, just the same way I'm trying to get them into a music supervisor's playlist that's going to be passed along to an editor. You know, so you're trying to pitch for what's a good Spotify playlist, like their best of the week, or you're trying to pitch for New Music Friday, or you pitch for, you know, the workout playlist, that sort of thing. And I feel like the same lessons that are listed here are kind of applicable to that. You always, you know, want to give them a good picture of what the artist has going on, any cool syncs that they might potentially have coming up, any touring information, that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's a little, we're a small label, but still kind of big. So I don't have too much insight more than that, but hopefully that's at least somewhat of a start for people.
I think that's great. You know, I think it's interesting because you have a small, for your frontline stuff, you have a small, or top line stuff, you have a small roster with a large impact, which is pretty cool. You know, and of course, like you guys do have so actually that's actually a really good question. So when you talk about, like, you know, a lot of the Disney stuff is you know, obviously kid stuff, and really you know, there's obviously you know, dancing, like you said, the dance instruction and stuff like that. Do you actually seed those videos ever to YouTube yourselves, like create content that could be used kind of you know, tertiary content that can be streamed and to help either, I guess, to promote the actual works?
Yeah, that's something we handle on the label side. So for instance, a property like Descendants, Disney Channel obviously produces, they own it, they put everything together, they hire the cast. And then when it comes time for us to move the album, or in this day and age, get that album streamed on Spotify, you also want to get it streamed on the Vivos and YouTubes, because that adds to the overall sales department. And so part of that will always be working with the original, like with Disney Channel, to say like, oh, should we do a cut down of this? Should we do an instructional video? What more can we do that at the end of the day is pushing towards, you know, consumption of that song? So does that kind of answer?
It totally does, yeah. I thought I mentioned it before, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
I think that's a really neat approach.
And it's a different strategy by project. You know, something like the Disney Junior music, which we also are tasked with monetizing, is going to have a completely different strategy. You know, you might have more of those that are albums, or how do you get somebody to go onto your, you know, Disney hits playlist on Spotify, that sort of thing. At the end of the day, just all increases the bottom line.
Yep, all you know, all the eyes eventually, they call it like harmonic resonance, I think. But you know, the more we pay attention to it as a species, kind of the more prevalent it gets. So the more eyes on your stuff, the better. So getting less metaphysical. So one of, you know, a few other things that we really think help when you're looking to locate buyers and get your music out there is to actually be out there where the buyers are. So if you do have artists that are currently, you know, available to do shows or side cases, available to do showcases or anything like that, putting together you know, a small showcase in your office after work with, you know, a bottle of red, bottle of white, and a 12 or a beer for some people can really be of high impact. We have some friends here in New York that have a studio and are also doing some licensing and some music supervision on the other side, and they do these really simple covers Wednesdays, where they have two artists that they're working with come in and play a couple covers, and it's, you know, well-stocked fridge and plenty of snacks, and it's great because every time I walk in there, it's like I get to see a couple of my clients, a couple of potential clients, so it kind of helps everybody to have those little shindigs. So we highly recommend that.
The live showcases and and inviting our, supervisors out to shows are just invaluable because of number one, because of the FaceTime, and number two, it just helps them engage with the artist in particular on, a deeper level, and that way they become champions of the artist as well. So it makes your job a little easier that, they're looking out for that particular artist. So, if, for instance, you are familiar with Morgan and you love him, you are theoretically more inclined to have him in the back of your mind when you're looking for a spot. And then the questions I get are more, does he have anything that's like X, Y, Z, as opposed to me trying to, like, have you heard this one? Have you heard this one? When you don't really know what spots the music supervisor might have at this moment in time. And so those are just invaluable. I would say just to make sure that anything your artist plays live, if you're doing these kinds of showcases, you can send it out right away, because there's nothing worse than a supervisor getting to the show, they love a song, they fall in love with it, and then they can't have it. So yeah, I feel like you should just always be prepared with the audio, at least, of something that a supervisor is hearing live.
That is a huge point. Everybody write that one down. I didn't even think of it, but yeah, that's great. So it's got to be music that you can ship straight away. Wonderful. I would have missed that one. So thanks for that. On the personal side as well, everybody likes to work with people they like. We know that for a fact. So they need to like the artist and they need to like you. So attending as many networking events as possible is huge. Synchtank actually produces a list of those, which will be in the handout. Every year we do this. It's just January to December, worldwide, every single sync and industry event that you can go to. Being prepared, being casual, and being the cool person is I think really huge. Synchtank, we actually got the majority of our first round of clients pretty much by going to all the conventions, buying everybody a beer, and then emailing them the next day, and just trying to be excited about the product and be an evangelist for it and get them into that excitement. And it's really served us well because we built relationships. We didn't have a customer. We had a partner. Oftentimes is how we see it. So starting off the relationship in a personal way can really help to that goal. And music supervisors often say as well, it's much better to put a face to a name and know that that person exists and can carry a conversation because a lot of I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, I feel like something that's also really important, especially in our industry, the music industry, is authenticity as well. So it's not just about meeting and networking and, put a great foot forward, just being your authentic self. Because let's face it, not everybody's going to be the best networker. Not everybody is going to be that kind of hard sales type person. And that's fine. You should be who you are, but put yourself in a position where people will get to know sort of what makes you unique in the spot you're sitting in, because I think that's when you're going to have the greatest opportunity to connect at a deeper level. And that's what's going to bring you more success than having these sort of very top line business connections, So authenticity is something we talk a lot about here at Disney in particular. It's something I feel very strongly about, that there's almost no right or wrong way to make a sale as long as you're doing it the way that works for you and who you are. Because you'll find there's a lot of diversity amongst supervisors themselves. Some really respond to the traditional sales model and some really don't. So it's all about just kind of showing up, being your authentic self and trying to make that authentic connection with someone. So
I agree 100%. And in order to find out which type of person they are, you definitely do need to show up and meet them. So I would completely agree.
Yes, exactly. You should be able to break the ice with people, but there's nothing wrong with saying I'm sorry, I'm really awkward or bad at this, but I'm so and so. Sometimes that's helpful as well.
Yeah, and people, usually I find in these networking events, you really do get to speak to people kind of in the off hours. So people have usually been, sitting and listening and learning for so long that they're just really happy to talk to people. That's my experience. Everybody seems to be really nice. So yeah, everybody check out this list. Music Biz, of course. has some great stuff going on. We love going down to Nashville, and that's on this list, and many more will be as well. So Rachel, I think before we go on to any more, I'm gonna have to probably speed up a little bit through these. I wanted to just zip through some questions. So I have one from Mike Sarah, and he asks, well, first he thanks us and asks us if we think that it's normal to pitch clips, 40 to minute 30-second clips of songs, but not full songs. That's something that I think I can't answer. I would defer to you, April.
I would think it's fine as long as within that minute 40, your song tells a complete story, that it doesn't sound like it's unfinished, or that it can be synced from beginning to end. Like as long as it has the chorus in there, or the rise, or that bit that a music supervisor, that call out that a supervisor would use, I think it's okay. Yeah, I would think it's fine as long as that minute 40 tells its own, can live on its own as a piece and a body of work. If it sounds like it just cuts off in the middle of a song, then I wouldn't. But if it can sort of be listened to in its totality, then I would say it's fine.
Okay, excellent. And then I would agree. Even with my limited, I would just say that of course, yeah, having it make sure it kind of feels complete would make sense, but not an expert there. So Rebecca Maxwell asks if we should include PRO numbers for the artist PRO number, and should the ISRC go into any metadata. I don't think you need your PRO number, because that's something that if you do the deal, that's going to be kind of listed and worked out later. So for the pitch, I don't think it's necessary. Just to talk a little bit about, let me see if I can do this quickly. Just to put this into context, I know we weren't going to talk too much about metadata, but just to answer this question, I'm just going to show iTunes for a moment. Go type 2. Sorry guys, bear with me. There we go. All right, so when we're talking about the metadata that goes with the file to a music supervisor or anybody, any endpoint that you're sharing this music out to, when they download the file, they don't have the full, metadata that would be necessarily valuable for actually doing a deal, such as licensing splits, writer information, writer PROs, publisher, or publishing owner, master owner, so on and so forth. Synchtank tracks about 60 of these individually per track. What does come along is, I just hit Command-I, and now I get this. So this is the ID3 metadata fields that go with every single track. Pretty much all all MP3 clients and listening apps will definitely have this data passed on and readable through it. It's really simple: the song, the artist, the album artist. That's if it's if there's a feature, if it's a different artist that is actually listed on the album. Composer, so that's a great place where you can put some writer data in if you need to. Sometimes that can be helpful. Grouping, this is something to be aware of. Basically, iTunes doesn't support grouping anymore like it used to, so we tend to recommend leaving that one blank. Comments, you could put your PRO information in here. You can kind of use this for anything you want. What we recommend doing is putting your calling card. So something like that. So that way, when this is downloaded into an iTunes and someone opens it up and says, "Oh man, this song is awesome. Who do I contract to sync it for this new project I have?" That information's right there. So that said, let's get back to PowerPoint. And I do not know where PowerPoint went. There we go. Cool. So I hope that answered that. And again, check out the metadata, links that we're going to send out shortly. And I'm just going to move to the next question. Oh, so this is a personal Synchtank question, but I'll answer it. Jamie Hart asks, I work for a media consulting company as a publishing manager, and we administer publishing for 35 clients. Is there an easy way to manage all of the artists within one login on Synchtank, or would you need to create an individual account for each artist? Yes, there is, and I'll just respond. If you just want to shoot me an email with that, your email, I can give you a little bit more information on that, Jamie. So I'll just send this out to everybody. And again, everybody, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me at that email. I love talking about this stuff. April, what do you think about the PRO? Do you think is there any valuable information that you think as a pitcher, pitching professional, and sometimes as a suit, that you would like to see within the MP3 metadata when someone sends it? Do you think the PRO is helpful or anything else?
I don't necessarily think it's that useful. I think what's the most useful is just to have, if you can at all ever get contact information for the other publishers involved, I feel that's really helpful, or at least give them a basic outline. Like maybe you don't have the perfect publishing entity name information, but at least save a music supervisor like an hour's worth of work or a couple, 20 minutes worth of work by letting them know where to send their emails to get started on the clearance process should they want to use it. So definitely just having your email address in there for what portion of it that you own. So like master, Hollywood Records, April Flores, and then publisher. Sometimes it's easy to just put Sony, BMG, Sony, BMG, and whatever publisher might be there. So they at least know, go to your contact person there to sort of ask as well. Or sometimes just as generic as like, Sony, BMG, and personal has own publishing, and put that person's email address in there. I think that's more helpful than having PRO and.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, what I've learned is oftentimes these, the music supervisors, and even if it's an editing professional that is in there kind of choosing the music. Time is always of the essence. So making sure that they can connect all the dots, get all the clearances that they need. ASAP can be helpful for them, and obviously if there's a time constraint and there's a one-stop or something that has to be cleared and talked to by multiple rights owners, the ease of licensing can factor into their decision. So if
if it's a one-stop, spell it out very clearly in the metadata, because that will make somebody's life so much easier and might actually even give your track a second look sometimes.
Yeah. Well, everybody loves one-stops, and just to backtrack on that. So, with licensing, as I'm sure everybody knows, there's usually two entities. There's the master recording, which is the actual recording of the song that the sheet music, or the work that the sheet music, or the rights to use the sheet music, which is the publishing. Sorry, I just lost myself there. So basically, you have your master and your mechanicals and your publishing. The publishing rights it can be related to the sheet music, and the masters can be thought of as the actual audio recording. A one-stop is when one owner owns everything. So you don't have to go get a clearance from anybody regarding the use of the song, or either you're not the full owner, but you have what we call an easy clear, which is basically I don't own everything. I do have the right to clear without checking. Or I can check easily. The difference there being is more paperwork at the end for the easy clear. The one stop is straight through, the payment's simple. Usually, it just goes to you and then you disperse it. Whereas the easy clear can be a little bit more when it comes to the actual license. So just, a little bit of an explanation. So let's see, moving on. Rosie from Straight Up Music Supervision says, absolutely, I agree. So I believe that was from earlier when we were talking about best practices for dealing with music supervisors. So I'm glad we got confirmation on that being good advice from an actual music supervisor. Thanks for that, Rosie. So just one more here. I know there's a few more, but I think that they might be better asked and answered later on. So the next is just coming from Kevin Kertis. I hope I'm saying that right. When making a metadata change in your iTunes music library, Kevin asks, are you saying that will update on iTunes so when someone else downloads the track, it'll appear in their file? No. So the information, what you're saying is there a dynamic push-pull? Well, if you send, yeah. So basically, if you make a change locally on iTunes, even with the track that's been either downloaded from a streaming service like Apple Music in particular, if you make a change like I was doing with that the song I showed you guys, that is only on your local iTunes within your library. All the information that comes from that goes into the metadata for the tracks that you see either available for sale or for stream on other services, that will come from the distributor, however that is. Okay, I'm sorry guys, I'm just reading through this quickly. No problem, Kevin. Thanks for writing in. Okay, so Rebecca just asked a follow-up question. So if not in the metadata, does the license request the ISRC if the song is licensed, or is that just distribution and sales? So that number usually just relates to the actual recording. So that's like the album as a body of works has a SKU. The ISRC is kind of the tracking number that the recording industry uses. So that's more pertaining to the master rather than the actual publishing. So I hope that clarifies it. Oh, Kermit, I caught your hold on and now I see why. So this will be the last one and then I'm just gonna skip over. This is relevant. Kermit says on SoundCloud, they ask for the IRSC and other international code, that's the ISWC. What is that? It's the same thing. The ISRC is the American version. The ISWC is the world version, or I think it might just be Europe. But you can definitely dig into that. I think a bit more. There's a page on that, either on Wikipedia or another industry resource. Rebecca just yeah. So not for licensing. Licensing is usually just a contract that's negotiated between the licensee and the licensor. She asks, do we need the ISRC to get paid? You don't necessarily for this. You do need it if you're releasing a song, but that'll be mandated or either created by your distributor or asks that you enter it in for your distributor. But yeah, so that's that. Cool, so let's move on to the next section. And everybody that asked questions that I didn't answer, I think they're related to some content towards the end, so I'll get into that. Cool, so employing multiple licensing methods. So there are a couple different ways that you can license your songs for sync. And I'm sure, April, I hope that you have can help me with this one because they have more experience than I do. So So these are just some best practices as far as how to prepare your catalog for sync licensing. So understanding opportunities, how to find opportunities. And, of course, that means a lot of research, a lot of watching TV, a lot of listening to video games, and playing, I guess, if you are. Checking out modern trailers, getting a lay of the land for who's doing what. I love, I watch a lot of TV. I would like to say it's for work, but it's really not. TV's gotten really good lately, but I always stick around and make sure I, glean from the credits who's the music supervisor and who's in the department. I love looking them up and finding out other work. It's a great way to discover projects that you might not have known before that could be beneficial just for your own personal entertainment and also, for work. But just understanding that, understanding your resources. And seeing if there are any resources that you can glean from learning a little bit more about the environment. I've seen people join forces with their catalogs before, which can help as well. So if you're having trouble finding pitches or having trouble finding opportunities for sync, and can work with maybe a sync plugger or a colleague that might have a catalog, and you guys can work together to to create opportunity for both of you. I think that's huge. There's some, in the handout, I definitely recommend checking on the Essentials of Sync presentation. I think I did that one. And then Law of Sync as well. I think I did that one as well. We definitely had a lawyer on the Law of Sync, so you don't have to take my word for that. We talked about having multiple versions, well, we talked about more about having the ability to and the agility to edit songs for particular uses. A lot of our clients also make available alternate mixes, if they're commercial remixes or if they're just a toned down mix that you made yourself or anything like that. Instrumentals, having the stems on hand is super helpful because if you have someone, an editor, someone says, oh, we love that, can we edit it ourselves, which I don't think really happens, but having them available so that you can work with other people to get your work kind of trimmed up to be more presentable for an opportunity is helpful. We talked a lot about MP3s here. It is super crucial to have broadcast ready versions of your files accessible. You don't want to be giving those around and sending them to everybody. One, because they're huge files, and two, you can't sync an MP3, but you can sync a wave. But having those ready for send at the drop of a hat is super important because that will obviously speed up the process if something does get synced, or if a particular before it gets synced, if someone asks for the wave because they need to do a rough edit or anything like that, it's just good to have those available. So that just goes down to having your catalog ready to sell. What do you think about that, April? Do you guys find yourselves sorting through or hosting instrumentals and stuff on your site?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've gotten to the point where we almost won't even upload a track to start working it unless we have the instrumentals on hand. Just because we don't ever want to be caught in a position where A&R is still maybe tweaking a track and doesn't have it ready. So that's part of that communication with the A&R team. Like, no, not only do we need the main version, we need the instrumental immediately available. Same with the stems, the artist should have turned them into, here is our production team, because you really don't want to have more than a 24-hour delay to turn those around, especially to a trailer client, just because a lot of times what supervisors, especially in the trailer world, are using the stems for is to still demo how the song is going to work in the piece. So you want to give them as much ammunition as possible to show, like, no, this song really works in this scene. They don't have to envision it. It really helps them buy to that piece of music as edited how they need. So it's definitely something you want to turn around quickly because they have very quick deadlines. They have to present to the editors, have to present to the creative directors, who have to present to the account people, who have to present to the studio. And so time is usually of the essence for those materials. And going back to finding opportunities, I do find a lot, aside from just, watching TV, I use Twitter a lot actually and follow certain handles that will maybe tweet trailer finishes. And then you kind of get a sense of what companies work on what projects, or kind of start to learn what companies have what business, and then you can send a little bit more of a targeted approach to those companies once you figure out who the supervisor is there. So for instance, if you're like, hey, I have a song that I think is really magical and fantasy, it would be great for, a Disney movie trailer, you can kind of search on Twitter, like who's finishing all those Disney trailers, who finished A Wrinkle in Time, who finished, the Star Wars trailer, who finished, any one of our properties, who finished Cars 3, and you kind of get a sense of where the business is going. And it works as well for, IMDb works for the film and TV placements. You can kind of see what movies are up and coming on the production schedule on IMDb, and then try to match to supervisor, and then kind of see what other projects they're working on. So I find those two things really helpful. And then TuneFind, because if you don't have time to watch every show, but you're like, hey, I think I have music that should work for that show, you can go to TuneFind typically and see what music has been used and sort of try to get a sense of, okay, what's the budget? Are they using a lot of big songs, classic songs, expensive songs? And it kind of helps have a little more, information at the ready when you send your pitch to the supervisor.
Are they using exit music from Radiohead? If it was from this last season, they definitely are. That was like the most right. No, TuneFind is really, really fun, even just for entertainment purposes. I mean, I've discovered so much music through going to TuneFind, and then either they have a Spotify link or just finding someone that built a Spotify playlist. And it's a great way to discover music as well as do some research. So super fun stuff. So Rebecca actually just asked another good question. Thanks for this. So regarding file formats, she says that she's been told that AIFFs are becoming more requested because they hold metadata. Yep, that's very true. So a WAV file is a lossless file, which means that you can copy it as many times as you want, and it's not going to be compressed or lose any of its digital information. Digital literally means that there's spaces in the information rather than being analog, which is consistent. So ones and zeros. So when you compress stuff, it kind of makes a mess of those ones and zeros, and that translates into less audio quality. MP3s do that. That you can set the compression, and they compress them to make it smaller, to be streamed or to be carried on. Back in the day when we actually carried files on our phones, it was pretty important to have a 128 or a smaller MP3. Waves don't do that; they're completely lossless. That's why they usually run about 50 megabytes as compared to like a 7 megabyte 128 MP3. The big thing that the MP3 has over the wave is that it has a header in which it can have that text metadata, which I showed you on the iTunes get info screen. Rebecca pointed out AIFFs. They're so genius, and they're being more adopted because they're best of both worlds. They're a lossless file that has a file header in which it can store metadata. So that is, so if you can burn down AIFFs as well, I would recommend that. Thanks for putting your hand up on that one, Rebecca. I appreciate it. So the next item that is actually kind of news to me. I think Emma Griffiths, our wonderful producer, put this in here. I never even thought about this, but this is pretty great. She, obviously writes, why not ask your writers about what brands and sports and film directors they like, and keep a little list and maybe a little profile on them. Especially if you ever get the off chance to do some bespoke work. For a buyer, it might really help to understand, what artists will gravitate towards what, and get them working on the project as quickly as possible. What do you think about that?
We definitely have those conversations at the start of a project, just because you don't want to be in a situation where you're pitching for a project that the artist will absolutely hate and never approve, and then you get yourself into a sticky situation with the music supervisor where you fed them the song they love, their client loves, and they can't have it. So it's definitely something we talk about from the very beginning. And I like it as well, just because it gives you insight into what they think their music does, or sometimes the story that they have behind the songs. So it kind of helps open your mind to what their song is about. Like, for instance, we have a song called The Storm by our artist ZZ Ward. And to me, lyrically, it speaks a lot to being saved and rescued. But when I heard ZZ tell the story about it, she saw it a lot more as there's a lot of guilt in the song. And that wasn't something I sort of picked up on my own. So it was really nice to sort of get her perspective and then have that added layer that you can then pitch and come across. So it's definitely important at the beginning to ask your writers, like, what are your red flags? What do you absolutely hate? Are you okay with this, or are you not okay with this? Before you even really kind of start sending the music around. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we left open for Synchtank clients as well, is, per song, what are the restrictions? So if you have this great song that you want to pitch, but there's the artist has has an aversion to alcohol, or doesn't want, or might have a belief system that doesn't allow for certain things. You want to make sure that you're not wasting your time, and you're not upsetting both sides by not being sensitive. So I think asking those questions is hugely important as well, and that's why we offer it at Synchtank as an option, that you can note that stuff within your actual track records. So cool. So the rest of the stuff on this slide we talked to. I wanted to move into a little bit. Oh, before I do, Emma's very proud of our new Spotify playlist series. So check out Synchtank's Top TV Tunes each month. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll get a link for it. I enjoy it. Of course, for the Damaged Coda, that's from Rick and Morty, epic second season end. So anyway. Moving on. So when we talk about different types, different ways that you can monetize your catalog, there are a couple different types of licenses that can be obtained and avenues in which you can utilize to license those. And we'll just go through them. I'm noticing really quickly, mini blanket isn't a thing. It's actually just called blanket licensing, unless there's a mistake. Macro licensing, however, or micro licensing, however, is employed by a lot of our clients, and actually our system allows for it directly. This is when you can basically set up a set of licensing scenarios within Synchtank, or I'm not sure what other softwares do it, but we think it's great. And what it allows you to do is present your catalog to people that are listening to it on your site, almost like you would at Beatport or something like that, where there's a buy button, and rather than buying the button, rather than buying the MP3, what you're actually doing is buying a license to utilize the song itself. And we have clients such as Rumblefish, CD Baby, Red Bull, clients with really large catalogs that and oftentimes catalogs that include a lot of library music or stuff that isn't really frontline tunage. So what they will do is they'll leave those songs on the site and make them available for licensing at lower cost for students, corporate films, YouTube usage, things like that. And the best part about that is it really just takes the overhead outside of off of the license, so you can start to license more economically for smaller projects and bring in revenue without having to really pick up the phone or type out an email. So that's super helpful. Blanket licensing, if you have a large catalog and you have relationships with broadcasters such as BT Sport or BBC or and AMC or anybody like that. Oftentimes what they will do, especially the sports networks, is they'll blanket license a catalog. So they'll say, for X amount of dollars, we'll take this subsection of your catalog. In Synchtank, they just have a login, they can see it, and then they can download and use whatever they want. But if you do set up one of those agreements, you might just send them a hard drive or a Dropbox file, and then they'll have the ability to license all of those and all of those tracks per whatever points you guys agreed to. That's super helpful as well, because it's a bunch of money up front, and that can help with your liquidity and signing artists and throwing showcases and so on and so forth. For anything Synchtank related, I don't want to make this a whole pitch, but you guys can definitely shoot me an email. If there's enough interest, what I might actually do is pull together a small, like 20 or 30-minute demo for everybody, and just run you through the system. You can check it out. We can do that at a later date. So keep that in mind. If you're interested, hit me up, and we can set something up for everybody. Lyric licensing, Lyric Find is great for that. Lyric licensing can, it's something that I'm a little unfamiliar with. Maybe April can help me a little bit more with that. April?
I actually don't do much of that myself, but actually combined with lyric licensing, we do have someone on our team who specifically licensed for consumer products. So that kind of comes into play. For instance, if you're putting like a classic Disney song lyric on a t-shirt, and she also deals with whenever we have, I'm sure many of you who have children have the same toys I have in my home, which is like the microphone that sings "Let It Go" and does not stop. Like that's another aspect of what we handle as a licensing team for Disney. But like I said, it's my coworker who does it, so I don't have much additional insight. But there's definitely, I'm sure there are lots of opportunities out there for that sort of thing.
So those opportunities would either be like actually printing a lyric from the copyright, or utilizing the lyric to be placed over other music or used in kind of a non-traditional context.
Yeah.
I'm just
yeah, sorry.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so that answers that. Again, all this stuff, there's going to be probably lots of information on the internet for anything that we couldn't answer here. Sampling, my personal favorite thing. I'm a little bit of a bedroom producer. You'll never ever hear any of it because it's horrible. But I utilize a service called Splice, which basically allows me to drop millions of samples into Ableton Live directly. you know, license it for a month, you know, a monthly fee. Super helpful. So if you have some really awesome instrumentation that you've been, you know, riffing on, or your artists do, you know, you might look to get into some sampling, you know, arrangements with one of the many sampling services. For bigger, more commercial artists, you know, Splice, you know, artists like Sophie or Burial, or, you know, big producers like that, they will actually cut a sample of each drum note, you know, the sound that they use through all of their various daisy chained elements, you know, and play a synth stab or something like that. And they'll license the actual individual hits themselves, which I find great, because I love when there's an artist that I love, I'm just like, oh great, let's use their snare, and there you go. So that's an option you can explore. We did a great interview with the Who Sampled guys, which you can check out on our Sync blog, and that really kind of sheds the light into the whole wide world of sampling. It's really crazy and fun, and it's really fun to kind of look at how many samples have been used over and over again. If you're curious about it, you know, just either I would recommend search the Amen break or Amen Brother and read the story about that. Other forms of licensing is something that Disney does a lot. By that we mean consumer products, and I think I'm going to have to humbly let April take the floor to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, and yes, like I said, we do have someone on our team, and we, you know, talked about dividing the work, who does work with all of our consumer products, and other people on the team, not myself, who do the app licenses and podcasts and all that sort of thing. So I actually don't have much to contribute really in this section. But like I said, really, we are the central hub for all licensing across the Walt Disney Company. So even if you are, for instance, like for instance, we have a big concerts business, right? And let's say there's an orchestra performing, you know, one of our scores, like for instance, what we do for the Nightmare Before Christmas at the Hollywood Bowl. Let's say they're recreating that in Germany. And so that German team might want assets from us to sort of promote that concert. Like they still have to come to us to get those licenses and requests, and to help other business units. So I guess that could sort of fall into like corporate videos and other media types. But like I said, that's something that comes through our team, not necessarily me specifically. But that's just another example of like of what we handle across company and where we kind of monetize.
Yeah, I think the bigger over the past few years, kind of the bigger trend or the exciting news within the industry is the explosion of so many different platforms that now need music. So podcasts, apps, obviously, you know, are huge. They're all sorts of opportunities for, you know, in-app audio, and, you know, even sometimes, you know, I met a couple of guys out in Needham a few years ago that specialized in audio identity. So they would actually create new pings and beeps and boops for various apps so that they sounded unique and were branded, you know, with their audio as well as the app itself, the visuals and everything. So that's a cool avenue to explore. Everybody at the streaming services, my friends and colleagues, are just all about podcasts now. Podcasts are you know, really becoming a big deal for a lot of people. Serial and other podcasts really made them a real viable part of the entertainment industry, and everybody enjoys them, of course, because you can listen to them without having your eyes on them, which is great. So looking for opportunities within the podcast world is great. And, you know, there's a lot of technology as well that is creating some new licensing opportunities. And it's a nice, pretty funny picture. Anyway, so, you know, so keeping in track on all these opportunities and various technologies is great. A lot of buzz around AR and VR for licensing opportunities. The VOD platforms, of course, have you know, just become these huge content producers. So that just opens up the you know, ability to sync even greater. And then user-generated content is huge. There's a lot of what we call multi-channel networks on YouTube, and these are kind of ad networks that are created by companies to help certain users monetize their videos. And we have some clients that actually license directly to those services. So there's a lot of different ways that you can explore those opportunities. Following publications such as Listed, as well as SyncBlog, of course, because it's a little more tailored, is always great. The biggest of all these platforms, which I just mentioned, of course, is YouTube. So we've created our own section about that, which, as you know, YouTube is kind of everything now. So there's a lot that can be done as far as, monetizing your YouTube channel, making sure that you do have all your copyrights in one place, running ads that work with, that work with your videos is something that YouTube sort of does automatically. So if you can bring people to those videos, you can bring people to your catalog, as well as, which could have some long tail, but it will definitely help to bring in some money depending on how well your videos do, directly. In order to do this, you obviously have to make sure that there's engaging content visually as well as audio, as well as the audio, and that can be fun. And if you don't have time to do it, then it could always be something that's a work in progress. Content ID is huge on YouTube. So what Content ID does is it basically allows you as the copyright owner to choose, how to monetize by placing ad. I'm sorry. You can basically choose to monetize it by placing ads within a video, which is huge. Content ID and things such as RadKey, which is something that we helped develop with Rumblefish, can also help you to keep track of where your music is being utilized and when. So moving on. Artist opportunities beyond the traditional. That is an exciting title. So this is just kind of the think outside of the box part in which we implore you to get out there and seek new methods of monetization. I mentioned bespoke compositions earlier, understanding which writers can turn around work quickly for jingles, for commercial, for whatever might be the case, anything from film scoring down to a quick edit of a song for a commercial. I think you can get a little bit more money for these often because the buyer has more control, and that it doesn't take your any of your work off of the shelf for while it's being utilized for a particular use, which is sometimes something that licensees will or licensors will stipulate. And then the one thing is just keep on with the industry letters and stuff like that. We have a whole list of those as well on the blog. Subscribing to those is great for many purposes. Outsourcing and partnerships. I think I spoke a little bit about that before. We found that a lot of smaller companies that we work with do find great use of kind of a cooperative competition model in which they work together to share resources and to help each other with their catalogs. Sync agents are another great way that you can kind of get some help by outsourcing. So sync pluggers, people that will take in various catalogs and kind of do the creative pitching for the smaller guy can help. Of course, they do that for a fee. You do need to make sure that you have someone that loves your catalog and wants to work with you. Just back to building relationships again. Sub-publishers, so these are publishers that might live in, reside or have control of masters and publishing in different territories. So you might decide to do a deal with a pub in the UK or in Europe, and you guys can trade catalogs and rep them in your respective territories, which is super helpful. Synchtank has actually a really cool feature in which you can just push those catalogs directly to each other, so you don't have to really move any files by hand. And of course, all the metadata would update automatically on either side if you so choose. Joint partnerships, adventures, joint ventures and partnerships, I apologize, they're often adventures, are just something that I think all industries thrive on. So any services that you can trade, any way you can work together, I always recommend it. It always worked for me. Cool. Well, April, I think that kind of brings it to the end of what I had as far as the slides go. Was there anything that you wanted to mention?
No, I mean, I think it's just, you know, in this day and age, it's really all about how do you cut through the noise and how do you get, you know, a percentage of people's time. And I just feel like it's, you know, whether that be a music supervisor's time or, you know, a listener on Spotify's time or a viewer on YouTube's time. And just for everyone to know, we're all kind of in the same position and in the same boat. You know, and I think it's not just our industry, it's all over the entertainment industry. You know, I feel like this is something Netflix struggles with, Hulu struggles with, you know, how do you get people's attention in, you know, this atmosphere when you're getting 8 seconds worth of someone's attention. That being said, on monetizing your catalog and specifically trying to get a supervisor's attention, I think you should just always have your ducks in a row when it comes to your metadata. I think you should always have your work buttoned up with all of your master publishing information, anything a buyer would need to actually license and purchase your, you know, your track, and to always be your authentic self, because I think that's going to help get you further than anything else. So that's my.
I think I'm going to use one of those like inspiring quote generators to put that in front of something, in front of some lovely picture for myself. I love hearing that. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, being yourself is pretty much everything. So is there anything that you wanted to plug? Any social links we should be paying attention to? Anything we should look out for in the media that you guys are working on?
You know, if you want to give a follow to the Hollywood Records social handles and to the Walt Disney Records social handles, it's an easy way to find out both what our artists are up to and also what our catalog is up to. So you can get everything from, you know, notices that there might be a new Star Wars box set coming to updates on like Sabrina Carpenter and holiday shows and this new song. So I think those are kind of fun if you're a Disney, if you just love Disney, the brand in general. That's a lot of where we put a lot of our marketing pushes for the catalog in general. And on the Sync side, you know, if you see the promo out there for that new show Rise with Morgan's Home, that is one of my favorite songs that we're currently working right now by one of our favorite artists. And yeah, I think those are just the big things right now to mention.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you said the magic word, Star Wars. I think everybody's ears picked up over here.
This is for back kettle.
Oh, well, only a few days now.
Also, I'm sure everyone's excited for this Friday. Is it this Friday or next Friday? The 15th. I don't even know what day it is. I know it's next,
it's next Friday. It's the 15th. Cool. Yeah. So Star Wars nerding. Thank you so much for that. Just you know, a quick Synchtank plug. As you can see on the screen, you can follow at Synchtank, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Definitely check us out on Spotify. We're excited about what we're doing there. We're first and foremost music nerds, so we love playlisting. The Synchtank Weekly and our fortnightly update are both really great resources. We really just do that to make sure that we're doing our best to, as a vendor for the industry, to really try to connect everybody and, you know, keep everybody in the know and hope to, you know, help to bring new talent in and educate them as best we can, connect out how we can. So, you know, follow all that stuff if you would. We love it. Check out the blog. We're proud of that one as well. You can check out synchtank.com or hit me up if you have any questions about the system. We definitely want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Jim and everybody at Music Biz. And, you know, you can follow them, of course, at Music Biz ASOC, so that's MUSICBIZASSOC, short for association. And then, you know, of course, there's always NAR Music that you can check out as well. So again, thanks Jim, thanks Music Biz, thanks Emma Griffiths, our wonderful producer who is the brains behind the operation. I thank her, and thank you so much, April, and I hope, thanks to all of you guys, and I hope everybody has a great day, and again, please feel to hit us up if you have any questions.